Alright, hey YouTubers, so I've had this for a couple weeks now. This is the SunJoe 10-ton hydraulic log splitter, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm happy with and what I'm not happy with on this thing. First thing I'll tell you, there was a minor, and you probably can't see it. Now we are recording in 4K, courtesy of Panasonic. This is the FC80 model. Has the ability to do 60x optical zoom, which is pretty friggin' impressive. Along with 4K, 30 frames per second. Unfortunately, it's not 60. Hopefully, the next model will have 60. I will definitely be buying that. But so, getting back to what I was saying, the outside of the box had hydraulic fluid on it, and I was kind of hoping that was from another model, or another box, but it appears it's from this one. On the concrete, I've got a little puddle there forming, and as you all know, if you lose all your hydraulic fluid, the amount of pressure that's going to go through that fluid, well, as you lose it, it's going to start to decrease. So we're going to have some problems. So I will probably most likely have to send this back. However, for the time being, I can enjoy this thing. And I must say, bar that little issue, which is, maybe it's a little more than that little issue. Barring that issue, this thing is pretty awesome for what it'll do. So let me try and get this camera angle set up. I don't like to show my face on the old YouTube, even though obviously we could have probably a better, more popular channel, because I am one hell of a good looking guy. But I don't want this to be about the looks. I want it to be about what I bring to the table here. Alright, so anybody that's read up on this thing, you've probably read the reviews. Some of the stuff that's on there, in my opinion, may be BS. So let's talk about a couple things before we get going. These handles, pretty flimsy. They're not even attached. It just kind of translates into this container here to hold it, and so that's kind of weak. I'm 6'2", 270 pounds, and very strong. But I find the handle placement of this to be in a bad spot. If I really, wanted to use my upper body power, such as what I would use in the bench press, this being a little higher for me would be good. You will see some points where you get some really heavy duty logs on here, and you'll be struggling to push this thing, even at my body weight and strength. This whole thing will actually slide. And this thing weighs, I think, 80 pounds according to the box. Alright. So besides that, we've got the handles. The left side is pretty much, it moves the, what do we call this thing? The device that actually makes contact with the wood and drives it into the splitter. It does the most throw to it. So you want to do that early on. And so when I get that into position, then really, depending on the type of wood, I may be able to break through just using the left. You may use both hands, but most likely the only one that's going to matter is the right. And now this is some really actually hard oak tree here. So I'm going to switch to using, so you see I can barely move the left side, but I can still crank on the right. So it's got a shorter throw, but the amount of torque that's using, and sometimes those sounds can be kind of scary. You hear that? I don't know if you hear that in the other, but I'm driving through. Now I can switch to both hands. Alright. This piece of wood is probably only 4" in diameter, almost up to 5 maybe. But now you see how well that is starting to split. So, you know, there's really no setup time for this, which is nice. And I've been leaving it on the concrete. I'm sure it would probably rust at some point all over my concrete. But, you know, it does give me a pretty good location to start from. I'm probably at some point, actually I'm going to slide it back so that my feet are a little lower. So this is higher up to my, where my chest is. Now, at some point, you know, you're just wasting your time continuing to crank. At this point, we've cranked far enough. The ideal dimension that they say is about 18-inch. That's how long you want your logs to be. And it would have been kind of nice if there were some markings on this steel here that would kind of tell you some different dimensions. Along if they would have added some kind of spacer. It'd also been nicer if this was a little taller. The pad that hits the wood, if that was a little bigger, that also would have been nice. The valve is works really pretty good, but the main thing is, you know, this really isn't set up for really big wood, and you can see where that's centered on is not even 4 inches from the bottom, so it's not even centered for a big piece of 8-inch diameter wood. Now, so a lot of times you'll be left with one last motion where you've got to break it in half. Not a big deal. But like I said, length somewhere around 18 inches, probably plus or minus a ½ inch. I think you could almost get away with 18 and a half in there. Diameter, something this hard. If I tried an 8-inch wood, it would probably have a damn hard time doing it. And obviously at this point I really don't need to split this again, but just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and split this one more time. And I'm going to lay it flat on here, the flat side this time. Now I only got, since I'm doing 4K here and this uses up a lot of megabytes, I get to record for 10 minutes, so at some point I will just stop with it. It's probably going to stop in mid-sentence, just so you see. Now, I'm getting a pretty decent workout. Eventually I'm going to start sweating. I'm probably taking my lumberjack flannel off. And we'll get down to, we might even get down to skin at some point. Be working so hard on this thing. Alright, so this one's pretty much split. And pretty good piece of wood. A little smaller than my wife likes them, but that's the way it goes. Alright, so I'm going to put a bigger piece on here just to make sure. And I kind of like to keep a blower handy to keep this track nice and clean. Alright, so we got that nice and cleaned off. Now, things you'll note, you want to make sure your cuts are normal to the wood, so 90 degrees. Watch out for the knots in there. And now this one is way short of 18 inches, so having a decent spacer is also a good idea. And in this case, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try one of these guys. No, that's too big. Not going to work. So I've been using one of these, but we'll just see how well this works, folks. Now this is a fresher cut piece of wood where the other one is highly seasoned. And this wood here I'm going to be using next year for burning. It's not really ready this year. That's how I was going to put it in the carpet. But this stuff, another type of oak tree, and it splits real easy. This one is definitely in the 6.5 to 8 inch range. I probably should have grabbed the tape measure. just so we could get exact dimensions. And now we've carried through this thing. And this is where your spacer is really important, because if you didn't have that spacer, it would stop right about, it would already stopped. And you will not be able to split that anymore. And we'll see, hopefully I can rip this apart. This is where your problems you're going to find are. Alright, that worked easy enough. So, you'll note, you know, people buy these and they're hoping these won't bother their back at all. I hate to tell you, even though this is definitely far easier than using one of these guys. One of these I believe is 8 pounds and the other is 5 or 6, but you know, swinging that definitely will get to your back. Definitely recommend wearing some kind of weight belt support or something. But this eventually will get to you. You know, part of it, you definitely want to have good, comfortable shoes, good padding in it. Try and keep, you know, good form. Don't bend over too much. Take your time, you know. That's a nice thing about this thing. I can do this. Obviously, I'm in my my garage right now. I could have a heater in here, keep it warm. I have a stereo going. Hell, I could even have a TV set on the wall. And I may just do that, folks, in the future. Because that, you know, just adds to making it that much more enjoyable doing this. That really didn't split that good. Now it doesn't, you know, just like when you're splitting with an axe, it doesn't always split exactly where you hope for. And that was an example. And you know, I really don't need to stick to it, but I'm just going to do it. And boom. So I could probably stop right now. Once you get, you know, an idea of where you are and whether it needs to be driven any more in there. Alright, so move this out of the way. And you could also have, you know, a little hatchet on hand. But, so it's working pretty good. We're going to switch back over to this wood. And this actually has a slight bit of a split in it already, due to the age and weather cracking it over time. So I'll be curious if it splits on the crack or on a new one. Alright, so we've talked about, make sure before I crack this, we talked about the motion of this thing. You definitely want to keep it on a nice flat level surface. Like I said, I've got it in the garage, which is making for a great location, especially for staying out of the wind. I can do this at all kinds of time of day, no matter how the weather is, as long as I have my supply of wood in here. And like I said, TV. You know, with the internet the way it is, I can have a Roku hooked up in here and watch Voodoo. And if I'm ever able to have my Amazon link down below again, I will probably have a link there in the future on this video, so you can buy one of those. You can buy a nice TV while you're at it. And hell, I've even got a fridge in this garage, folks. So when I really get tired and thirsty, I can do that. I got a golf cart here I can sit down on. Hell, we could even start up the car and really have a jamming music system going. We've got chairs in here. I've got a generator. I got all kinds of stuff I could use in here to make using this thing that much better for me. All the creature comforts at home, basically.